I like how you said click, not one.
I did that for my own sanity.
1, 2, 3, click. It's gonna be the motive I have today. 1, 2, 3, click. I don't know where to put the little video screen at.
Can I just start today's discussion by going, if your institution is called Johnson County Poor Farm and Asylum, it's probably not a great place.
Well, see, I didn't read up on that one.
Where did you go? To the Poor Farm. Like, damn.
So, if you can't gather, this is kind of like a part 2, but we're talking about disabled people. Like
in asylums.
In asylums. Now, I will give a go-ahead. More than likely, I will not post any pictures with this one, only because it actually is very heartbreaking for me. As much as we can laugh, I do. We have a heart. So, sorry, there will probably be no photos. You're more to Google. You can Google your own, but...
Also, again, we both have very personal ties to the disabled, so if we laugh a lot through this episode, it's because of the sheer, like, horror of what we're reading, not because we think it's funny, but because we're trying to cope with this in our own way.
We've done a lot to help disabled people, so we're not heartless. But yeah, like I said, no pictures. You can Google it yourself, but it's just very heartbreaking for me and stuff, and I just don't want to expose pictures for people. You know, it's just too sad. So I just want to give a little disclaimer beforehand. But other than
also, if you don't know what podcast you're on, I'm sorry, but. Hi. This is a cereal box podcast, okay?
It's boxes.
Boxes, plural.
We don't even know our own name, but welcome.
I don't know why. I had a completely different thing in my head of like what podcast this was.
You were thinking of like Reese's Puffs.
I was thinking about actual cereal. And I was like the Tricks podcast. The Fruity Pebbles podcast.
We bought a pack of cereal boxes. You know, like at Halloween time they come out with like, I don't know, is it Count Chocula or some shit like that?
Yeah, this is a staple in my childhood. Yes.
So, Boo Bear. Okay, so anyone who likes them, I'm sorry, but they all taste the fucking same and they taste like shit.
Yeah, they're kind of trash. I'm not gonna lie.
Sorry,
but will I buy them?
Probably.
Yes.
James wanted it so bad, so it's like a pack and you get one of each, so I was like, fine. But we did it, and again, welcome, Cereal Boxes Podcast, part 2 of Asylums. I'm kind of curious, I don't know what we're going to do next, we'll figure that out. But
Asylums / sanitariums, I think we said the difference last time, right? They're not too far off, though.
Yeah, I put the definition and stuff in there. They're very similar. Asylums obviously was more for the crazy people, as you would refer to, people with psychotic or mental disabilities and physical disabilities, but the hospitals were more for like people with like diseases and stuff. But
I like how, again, too, they just like started grouping them together. Like, that's fine.
Yeah, they kind of gave up over time and they just like meshed them all into one. So
it's like, oh, you have TB and you have schizophrenia? That's fine. You can be roommates. It's okay.
we were trying to split it up as asylums and then like otherwise, but it turned out like when you Google it, they kind of meshed it together. So we had no option but to just kind of blend it into one.
Well, that, and like if you watch like, you know, like most haunted places in America, they always like talk about like, I always hear the term sanitarium, so I'm always like, well, wait, was this the same thing? Because like they also talk about like the people in them, like, oh, they kept a bunch of, you know, mental patients and sick people here, so you're going like, wait,
well, none of this but see, like, I wonder who came up with the word like sanitarium though. That's something I didn't look up.
Well, sanitary has to be bridged out of there.
Yeah. But
which they were not. They were not sanitary places most of the time.
Yeah, most like sanitariums came about from like plagues, but tuberculosis was like the really big, I think, one that really set it off. Other than that, there wasn't that many until.
And honestly, if you were sent to one of these, like, that was a death sentence, you were just gonna die.
Yeah. You had no choice.
Maybe that's another reason where it came out of. Maybe it wasn't so much like them being like sanitary. Maybe it was to keep the public sanitary, so they kept them all in one area.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If someone Googles it, let us know.
Yeah, we don't do our research here.
Not very well.
Welcome.
We don't get paid for this.
I promise this time I won't look at you in the face and go, thanks, when you offer me rancid butter.
I was dying when I was like editing the video. I was cracking up. Oh my god. I
thought about that for a long time. I was like, oh my god.
Having to listen through all the audio again and then like waiting for it to come up was just like, yep.
And I told you it's because I legit for a second I was lost in like what we were talking about to the point where I thought I was there. I was here.
Just this piece of like rancid ass bread, some shitty butter,
and rotten meat. I don't know.
Rotten meat. There's a bug in your bread. Like, ugh.
Yeah, not having it today. But today we're talking about worse things because newsflash to everybody: the disabled were not treated very well. At all.
They were not. We have both like mixture of like information. I went kind of more in depth by accident into like the methods they used on these people. For some reason I got into a deep hole. I know Randy has a lot of other information as well, so we're gonna kind of just bounce like ping pong back and forth. I don't know. So yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do.
I guess.
What do you want me to do? Blink at you when something to say?
Blink twice if you need help.
I mean, I guess I could give you this little tidbit about the Johnson County Poor Farm.
You're gonna have to now. I want to. Please tell me. I gotta hear this.
Okay. Well, it opened in 1855, and they were adamant that they had good living and work conditions. But when your name is Johnson County Poor Farm and Asylum, I don't know what to tell you. This was never going to be okay. The facility was dirty and overcrowded. What's new? They were also unregulated. So unlike a lot of asylums that you'll find, this one had no like oversight at all.
So would they just throw those people in there and then everyone's like every man for themselves, or?
Yeah, pretty much. Men and women lived in the same space with little oversight. And living at the poor farm was pretty much not voluntary. I'm reading straight off this article just so you know, because I didn't go deep into this, but I saw the name of it and it struck me when we started recording, because I was like, the poor farm, like, could you imagine, like, you get looked in the face one day, like, where are we going? We're taking you to the poor farm. Like, all right, like, I guess.
I would have just jumped out of the car and been like, fuck it, I don't want to go.
And I like how, like, when, like, all this is going on, apparently the doctors blamed the overcrowding on city development, machinery, and industry.
What?
It's like, or you're just running a shitty institution.
Yeah, and no one is doing anything about it. Maybe. So I kind of like, I don't know, I guess I kind of went off like the idea of like when it all started over here, I guess. I had put in colonial America, caring for people with disabilities was often a town's responsibility, which was true. Towns provided poor farms, as you were taking, or almshouses as places to house and support those in need. Individuals with disabilities, criminals, and paupers, so poor people, they just threw them in there.
Okay,
were often lumped under one roof.
I'm going to interrupt and say, almshouses sounds a lot better than the damn poor farm.
But see, it's weird because they put it as poor farms and almshouses, though. So they said it as two different things, but naturally, instead of saying we put poor people, then we put paupers. We put paupers in there.
Yeah, we're trying to like soften the language. They're not poor. They're just paupers. It makes it sound cute.
So instead of living in that cardboard box, they put you there. It said they said they offered good living and work conditions. However, these facilities were often overcrowded and dirty.
Are we reading the same article?
I don't know.
We're probably reading the same article.
But
do you not see where it says poor farms?
No, I don't have a webpage open.
Oh. We must have read some of the same information. I'm just saying. Like
I mean, it's so sad, but a lot of people all mention the same thing, though. They're like, well, we shoved these people here. It's not our fault, but it is the town's problem. But we don't want to do anything with these people.
Well, and a lot of family members would just, like, drop these people off, too, because they couldn't care for them.
Yeah, I read that. It said, like, when families could not cope with care, these individuals became wards of the state. By the 1800s, inmate numbers swelled. So, basically, though, they would take criminals and put them in there, too, which didn't make sense. Why would you mix that with people with disabilities who can defend themselves? Like, that doesn't make sense. I mean, it's like putting a guy in a wheelchair with a guy who committed, like, mass murder. It doesn't go together.
I mean, isn't that the complaint that people have about the prison system now, is that you have a lot of non-violent drug offenders that are put with, like, murderers?
Yeah, because they're supposed to house them separately. Like, there's different levels of, like, federal prisons, but sometimes, like, even though you were in the first level, if you do something stupid while you're in there, they push you up to the next level.
Just like, I think if you're like white collar crime, like if you're the guy who stole $45 million from a company, your ass gets to sit in a cell with no contact with anybody, no access to a computer, no nothing.
Well, if they're like Martha Stewart, where she looked like she was at a resort, you can walk freely on the grounds and everything else. She taught like classes. Of course, she's Martha fucking Stewart, but so you learn to make like a pound cake with like, I don't know, like little cookie cutter cutouts.
Could you imagine too? You know that she ran like her own gang.
I would definitely join the Martha Stewart gang. I mean,
because you get lemon cookies and meringue, and you don't get stabbed by Martha when you're not looking.
If you're shanked by Martha, you better get that tattooed.
And she stabs you with a wooden spoon. You don't even get. You don't even get metal.
It's just yes. I also have, in response, state government took responsibility for these populations and often removed them to the countryside. So they just shoved him out of town. They said, fuck it, we're going to put you out here.
Are you kidding? So, like, they started off in towns, and then they, like, pushed him to the outskirts?
Yeah, they didn't want to see him anymore, so they just put him in the outskirts of the town. And
well, that makes sense why a lot of these places are outside. Like, because you ever notice, like, all these, like, sanitarium and, like, asylums are, like, miles and miles away. Like, some Shutter Island shit. Like,
By the way, that movie is trippy. I watched it. I finally watched the whole damn thing. It's trippy. I care.
I did too.
It's good though. I will say that. It says groups were divided and placed in institutions that were thought to be specific to their needs. However, individuals with disabilities, whether physical or cognitive, were commonly sent to the lunatic and the insane asylum. So now I went from asylum to an insane asylum.
Wait,
so now
you could just like have a bum leg and be sent to the lunatic asylum?
Yeah, with people who were like fucking batshit crazy. So that would be kind of fucked up. I would be, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to take that though. And of course back then you didn't have television necessarily always to watch or anything like that. So you were just sitting there watching people like scream and I don't know, do weird stuff. And
yeah, that's the other thing. Like, how do you, and I'm wondering if this is a challenge like mental institutions still have, if anybody out there knows. Is it hard to like care for people like with these, I guess, psycho, like, and I mean psycho as in like mental like psychosis, psycho, like those tendencies? Is it hard to like watch TV with them and stuff? Like, I would just wonder if they could mentally handle that stuff a lot.
See, that's a good question though. Like how does that work? Or, you know, I don't know.
And I know we don't know a lot about psychosis or how it works, so that's just interesting to me. And then, like you said, then you have these places where I know that they would play music and do all this shit, and it's like, well, you don't know if that could be helping one person in that room, but that could be fucking up 3 others. Like,
yeah,
they're like hearing like Bible verses in there or some shit, like,
because like a lot of disabled people, like everyone's different. All cases are different. Yeah, maybe simple. Or you could be hurting someone worse. Like, you don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, even look at something as like simple as the autistic spectrum. You know, there are some autistic people who don't mind loud noise and a lot of activity or whatever, and then there's some that literally can't handle it. Yeah. So it just makes me wonder, like, what these places were actually like, because you could have been triggering people and didn't even know like what you were doing.
Like, fuck it.
It's like, oh, he doesn't like the radio. I guess we better move into an electric shock therapy session.
So now stepping away from that a little bit, because I have 2 paragraphs, I guess they're a little same or different, I don't know. Doctors were influenced by popular ideas of eugenics in the late 1800s / early 1900s, and like you said, it was more popular in America. A lot of people would come overseas though to America to test their eugenics process. It says eugenics is the misguided belief that controlling genetics could improve the human race, which removing their ability to have children. So I don't know if they just snipped what they needed to, or if they just straight up cut it all off or anything.
Well, and here's my argument for eugenics is that I don't even think it's like a practical idea anyway, because anything can go wrong in the human anatomy, like at all. Like, you can be 2 perfectly healthy people and give birth to a kid with disability. So, like, what does that say? Like, you're never going to eradicate disabled people.
But see, that's the thing. They only looked at the disabled person itself. They never looked at the parents and said, okay, well, how did this come about of you 2? So, really, they were just one...
Well, that's where the idea of inferior genes came from. Was like, oh, you're Polish or whatever, so your genes just might not be as good as an Aryan, which is dangerous. I mean, you can see why this mentality really took off, and like why it was used so badly like later on, because it does give you that sense of like, well, there must be people who are more superior than others. And it's like, what? Like, no, maybe genes are just jacked up. So, I mean, yeah, that's true. I don't know. They had their thoughts back then were so one-sided. It was kind of ridiculous. The use of certain treatments for mental illness changed with every medical advance. So I'm going to read off some, and I kind of went in depth with some of these, so if you're unfamiliar, I can actually explain them to you. It says, although hydrotherapy, metrazole convulsion, and insulin shock therapy were popular in the 1930s, these methods gave away to psychotherapy in the 1940s. By the 1950s, doctors favored artificial fever therapy and electroshock therapy. What the hell is artificial fever therapy?
That was the only one. It kind of goes under some of the other ones I have, but it has to do with like the way that certain medicines they gave him, but like they would force him into these like weird things. The first one,
oh my gosh, you're right. It's like literally forcing them into an coma therapy. What?
Yeah, I'll go into a little bit of that, because I was like, I was reading all these. I was like, holy shit, this is terrible.
This is the lobotomy of this episode.
And I'm not even talking about lobotomies in this episode either. I'm not even
No,
going
we're all
there.
mad at lobotomies.
We're done. Fuck lobotomies. It says electroshock therapy and hydrotherapy were among the two new methods, so around the beginning of all this. It said with electroshock therapy, small electric shocks were passed through the brain of patients.
Quote unquote
Hydrotherapy
small.
or water exercise were developed to help patients. Now, it says hydrotherapy and stuff, but what they were doing was, again, like we talked previously, they put them like ice baths and stuff like that and exposed them to extreme colds and kind of almost shut their bodies down and then pull them out at like the last second. And like,
I have heard too that they did the opposite too, where they'd put them in very like warm or hot water to
it says they can sometimes do warm water for extended period of time, often calming effect on them. But it said for this reason, mental hospitals use hydrotherapy as a tool for treating mental illness. But it didn't work for everyone, but sometimes they would force it. They, I think, at first forced it on everybody, but then realized it wasn't working on everybody.
And let me guess, nobody took notes to be like, oh, well, it seems to work for like
Sally.
people who seem to be schizophrenic or have like manic fits, but it doesn't work on people who, I don't know, have just a bad leg. Like,
we're trying to cure your leg. It's a peg leg.
And that's the thing is like, yeah, when did they like, well, I know that they did. I don't know what I'm asking. They kind of grouped like all crazy people together, right? It didn't really matter how you were crazy. You were just crazy.
Yeah,
like,
they just at some point they gave up separating them into separate wards, and they just put them all together.
That's why when psychiatry takes over, it becomes all about the disease itself or like the mental illness itself.
Yeah. Electroconvulsion therapy is a medical treatment most commonly used in patients with severe major depression or bipolar disorder that has not responded to other treatments. So ECT involves a brief electrical stimulation of the brain while the patient is under anesthesia. So basically they knock your ass out and then they electrocute you and then wake you back up. So yeah.
And like, oh, they like, oh yeah, they were really calm after that. Like, yeah, I'm sure they were.
You killed them.
They weren't cold. Their brains were fried.
And you know, and I kind of wonder before they ever used it, like on prisoners. I wonder if that's where they took it from. Like,
I wonder
if they took it and say, "Oh, we could just do this to like criminals," and then like kill them.
I just still love the idea of like, oh yeah, they woke up very calm. Like, yeah, I bet I would be calm too if I knew that. Hey, they're gonna shock the shit out of me.
Little Sally hasn't woken up in 3 days. She's doing great.
I'm just wondering how anybody thought shocking the brain was a good idea. It wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't. Oh, quick tidbit, because I know you and I talked about this. If you didn't know, psychiatrists used to be called alienists. Neither one of us actually knew that. So I thought it was an alienist was a whole other thing. Now I feel dumb.
Yeah, and I don't know. I know there's a show out there now called The Alienist, and I'm wondering if it's about this stuff. I still haven't looked into it.
We need to.
I know Dakota Fanning's in it.
Is she really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Like, yeah, speaking of like hydrotherapy. No.
Well, it said the discovery of mood stabilizing effect of lithium carbonate by John Cade in 1948 would eventually revolutionize the treatment of bipolar. And they said it was extremely successful. And even though it was successful, they banned it from the United States until the 1970s. So for almost, like 20
Freaking
years.
U.S., man.
So for 22 years, the U.S. could have been using it and probably had cured a lot more people, but they were like, yeah, we're not going to use that. And now they could have probably saved a lot of people over time and helped them. But
even though it was like marginally successful, I wonder what the decision was. They probably couldn't make money on it. Let's be honest.
That's probably what it was.
They're like, oh, we got to figure out how to be able to tax the shit out of this. Hold on. I mean, it was just, I don't know. It was just kind of crazy.
Metrazole shock therapy was like insulin. It worked on the mistaken premise that epilepsy and schizophrenia couldn't exist at the same time. So the drug, metrazole, could produce seizure-like convulsions in patients, therefore shocking their brains out of the mental illness. It proved to be a shock physically as well. Like, so they were like, oh, this is great. They're just
so in a way they were just stimulating like parts of their brain to just...
Yeah.
Trying to, like, wonk it back into reality. Like, what?
So they gave up on lobotomies, and they were like, we're just going to shock certain parts of your fucking brain. And we're like,
you mean driving an ice pick into it wasn't working?
So they put the ice pick in and then just added a car battery to it. No, I'm just kidding.
I just love that idea. Like, oh, you know what? You know, the ice pick shit, that ain't working. We gotta think of something else.
We need something a little stronger.
we gotta switch it up, guys.
Oh my God.
What the hell?
It says it wasn't without side effects, however, including amnesia as well as increased suicidal tendencies.
Great.
What caused from it. Ernest,
maybe because you're poking parts of the brain you shouldn't be poking.
If you're familiar with Ernest Hemingway, for example, he died by suicide shortly after an ECT treatment.
Oh, yeah. So, didn't he put a shotgun in his mouth?
Yeah, I believe that's how he did it.
I want to say that's what he did. I'm pretty sure he did.
It says
you want me to fact check myself real quick?
Please do. Let me know.
But yeah, you can keep talking.
Oh, it says barbiturates, I can't say the word, put patients into deep sleep thought to improve their madness. Chloral hydrate came of the use in the 1950s, but like the drugs before it had side effects, including psychotic episodes. So that didn't fucking work. It just made it worse. Did you find it?
Yeah. The top of the article just says he ended his own life, so... and suicide. Trigger warning again. I'm sorry.
Is that a pun?
Well, apparently there were reports beforehand saying that he was unusually hesitant, disorganized, and confused.
Oh, okay.
So I'm wondering if he was just deteriorating mentally for a while.
I wonder if that last bit kind of put him on edge.
Yeah. Oh, yep. Yeah, he shot himself with a double-barreled shotgun.
Well, so can we say he went out with a bang?
Yeah. Yeah, I like... Hold on, I gotta read the sentence to you. Mary called the Sun Valley Hospital and a doctor quickly arrived at the house, determining that Hemingway had died of a self-inflicted wound to the head. Really?
I thought it was a... It wasn't tuberculosis.
If I were Mary, I'd be like, you shitting me?
They like you had to sit there and wait for hours, and the doctor, after like hours of examination, he goes, I think he shot himself. Bitch.
What's sad is that, you know, she called for help or whatever. It's like, yeah, he shot himself. And the doctor comes in, yeah, he shot himself. What? Her face must have been priceless.
Remember, we have uterine fury, so we don't know anything.
That's true. And she was probably keeping quiet too, because she's like, listen, they got him, they're gonna get me next. Again, not laughing at this guy's suicide, I'm just saying, like, the subsequent actions after the fact of like, yeah, he shot himself. Like, oh really? Like,
what was your first clue?
What was the hint? The gun? Like, what
oh my goodness. I also found his name is Manfred. I think it's pronounced Sackel. I can't remember. It's a German neurologist. He developed the insulin shock therapy, where he injected high levels of insulin into patients to cause convulsions and a coma. That's where the coma come from.
Oh my
after
God.
several hours, the living dead would be revived from the coma and thought cured their madness. I was like, so you nearly kill them, put them in a coma, then you try to wake their ass up and hope to God it worked.
This guy...
He thought it was like the greatest fucking thing since sliced bread. Probably was
did
before
it
sliced
work
bread.
though? But did it? Like, did anybody who woke up from a coma like wake up going, "Yeah, I'm great"?
Well, here's the fun fact. It said this process would be repeated daily for months at a time.
Oh my god.
Okay. With doctors sometimes administering as many as 50 to 60 treatments per patient. So imagine going to 60 comas and waking up.
That can't be good for you.
It says, nevertheless, the treatment proved popular based on the questionable success rate. So,
Based on the questionable, the words questionable success rate should not be together.
but they did. They wrote that all out. And I was like, so you don't even know if it's truly working, but they're like, fuck it. We can just do it to everybody.
This was like last time when we were like, botched lobotomy is not a real statement because all lobotomies were botched. All of them.
All of them. Like,
No, not a single lobotomy fucking worked.
I mean,
Not a single one.
it's just so. And that's what I have, like, on all the ones I kind of went in depth with. But that one really kind of got me with the questionable success rate. So that was pretty solid. Let's see, what else did I find? I found that by the beginning of the 20th century, though, ever-increasing admissions to these hospitals had resulted in serious overcrowding, which we kind of knew. They kind of just shoved any Dick and Jane into those things after a while. And even though there could have been 20 beds to a room, there could have been like 60 patients in there, which was really sad. It said funding was often cut, especially during periods of economic decline. And during wartime, in particular, many patients starved to death. So a lot of asylums, even older ones that are still standing today, you guys, there's like massive like body counts buried underneath those grounds. It's really sad. Said asylums became notorious for poor living conditions, lack of hygiene, overcrowding, and ill treatment and abuse of patients. Abuse was a common thing probably in the beginning of the 20th century for probably about like 30-40 years.
And this isn't to say like everybody who was in these places was evil and abusing patients, but like
there were some.
We all gotta acknowledge that this was an issue, and it had probably been an issue for a long time.
Yeah, and they tried it, and the hard part was finding people to work in these places because not everybody wanted in there. It said that they did one way of trying to killing off patients was starving them to death on purpose. So they were trying to lower the count by just killing them off. So if you shoved like your cousin, aunt, uncle, or whatever in there, and they were pretty well disabled, more than likely they could have been killed off because they didn't want to care for them anymore. Like, that's really sad. And,
yeah.
Again,
it's kind of like a jacked up version of hospice.
It really is. And, it says the Quakers of Philadelphia were the first in America to open, to make a organized effort to care for mentally ill. I think in Philadelphia or whatever, it's like one of the oldest hospitals in the United States. It started there. So, what I can remember. If you heard that loud noise, that is literally a pecan falling on my roof, and it sounds like a baseball.
I was like, is Batman like breaking into your shirt right now?
Luckily, it's not that windy out, so it doesn't sound too bad. It says the newly opened Pennsylvania Hospital in Philadelphia provided rooms in the basement. Complete with shackles attached to the walls to the house. A small number of mentally ill patients.
This went downhill so fast.
I was trying to hold it off as best as I could.
When you went basement, I was like, okay.
Shackles. I was trying to ease my way into it.
There was no easing into that. It just went downhill. It's like the rancid butter thing. It went downhill so fast.
They got a piece of butter, but it was rancid. Like, piece of bread.
Oh my god.
So even though they were trying to do a good thing for society, they basically just locked these guys up and locked them underground, said, we don't want anything to do with them.
They'll be fine down there.
It'll be good. You're fine. It says opening the practice of professional nursing was to men. They tried to encourage men to join because, you know, obviously there wasn't enough women, let alone enough strong women to hold some of these patients down. So
Right.
training schools and asylums, unlike those in general hospitals, actively welcomed men. Millstones found places in schools that also accepted women or in separate rooms or separate schools formed for just them. So they started creating like a whole sector of men trying to become nurses and stuff just because they needed people to help with these mental facilities.
The men who didn't want to become doctors.
I can only
Because I
imagine.
imagine male nurses at this time was not that common. I don't imagine.
No, I think it was just kind of like introduce like a new idea. Like if you weren't a doctor, like you could become a male nurse. So you imagine like going home in like the 1800s and your dad expects you to go to like attend Harvard for 3 years to be a doctor and you come home and say you want to be a nurse.
You're like, I'm a nurse now. Where do you work? At the poor farm. No. Could you imagine?
I wouldn't know what to do. I mean, I'd be like, okay, cool. You do you, bro.
I mean, you do, yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah, like, I guess the other question I have is, too, is, like, and I couldn't find a lot about this, where a lot of these people weren't medically trained.
They weren't. They were training these nurses and stuff to kind of just
Literally care for, like, cook, clean.
just make sure they weren't like hurting others or severely hurting themselves. That's pretty much it. They didn't give them like a true medical training, you know, and it was like sad because you know, like not nowadays where you go to a hospital, it's a nurse who actually went to school, you know, did training.
At least you would hope so. You would hope that you don't go to like the freaking emergency room. It's like, yeah, so I'm just, they just teach me how to take your information. Can't help you with like anything else.
It reminds me
I can try to reset your arm though. Like,
it kind of reminded me of an episode of Desperate Housewives. This nurse who's responsible for one of the moms, like their mom's dying, and she tells this lady, she goes, "Oh yeah, the doctor, he's so nice, he's so sweet. I never went to medical school, but he didn't actually read my resume, but he hired me anyways."
oh my God.
She's the reason why like so many patients died in the hospital.
That's horrible. Like, and that, yeah, that's like all I could really find about it though, is that a lot of them weren't medically trained.
Yeah, and I thought it was just interesting though that they eventually, like how they talked about, that's when they finally decided like, hey, men could be nurses too, because they at that point they were getting desperate. But I think doctors back then, you went to school for like 3 years, and you were deemed a doctor.
You went to school for 3 months. You wrote one paper and you were a doctor.
Genius. But you know, it was just a lot of stuff. And also what I always felt bad is the small kids who got thrown into these asylums. You know, people would leave their children there, like no parent, they never showed back up, nothing.
Oh yeah.
So between,
it wasn't very common for people with mentally, or yeah, not even mentally, just mentally, any disabled children. They were encouraged not to keep them.
Yeah, it said between 1900 and 1945, up to 500,000 children had a physical disability or sensory impairment, mainly due to poverty or disease. It says there were no vaccinations, and many working class families couldn't afford specialist equipment or treatment. So that's why these kids were thrown in there. And everyone now had the right to education, schools for the crippled, blind, and deaf. Children could be harsh, but there were some new approaches. So eventually, over time, someone's like, okay, it's not right to put these kids in here. So that's, like Ray Charles, I think around the time when he went to school for the blind, that was still like a newer concept.
Not everybody is a Helen Keller or even like a, Ray Charles, where they get to go and be educated. A lot of these kids were just tossed.
Because Helen Keller, I mean, she really got hit with a lot of things, and so...
And she was a triple threat.
She was.
Like,
In a nice way. We're not saying it mean. In a nice way. She was a triple threat.
I think Kelly Keller was pretty boss, but like,
But I mean,
yeah, blind, deaf, and couldn't talk. Like,
the thing is, she learned to talk from feeling her teacher's lips. That's how she memorized movement of words. And so she would sound it out, and eventually she learned to speak that way. And I think that's because the teacher was trying to use the traditional method that they were learning, but when they did that, I mean, that was like a whole new thing, and it was really stunning. Because Helen Keller lived quite a while, didn't she?
yeah, she lived a long. She was 87 when she died.
Holy crap! She was older than I thought she was. I thought she was
So
like
she
only
was
like
born
60s.
in 1880, and she lived until 1968.
Wow.
Yeah, she had a signature and everything. I'm like, how? Like,
I know there's like, if you go to YouTube, you can find a couple of videos where you can actually hear her talk and the teacher explain how they developed her speech. And it was crazy, though. It's like really impressive. I mean,
but doesn't this show you too just how much care like one kid needed to be able to function? And you're talking about these facilities who were housing probably hundreds or even thousands at some point.
Yeah.
There was no way. I mean, unless you had 1,000 employees also, they were outnumbered. I mean, they were just, and I understand, but it also doesn't really still excuse them for all the horrific shit that you hear about later.
Oh, yeah. And I think the different treatments, I mean, I can't imagine how some of these people felt going through this. And this was all experimental. This is way before, obviously, our time. So you figure 1800s to the 1900s to nothing like that now. Now, you know, people go to schooling to help people with this. Back then, they just threw you into a building and called it good.
Yeah.
And it's
well, not to mention people tend to keep their disabled kids now. They don't tend to send them away.
Yeah. Well, now, you know, the government, you know, will try to assist, or usually, not all cases, I can't speak for everything, but it's, you know, I just feel bad. And like I said, it's a sad subject. That's why, I'm not putting any photos up because it's too sad. It makes me sad. I can't really look at them.
I mean, these people look like they're dying of starvation. Like, sort of sad. Like,
I can only imagine what they feel like. I kind of just want to go into that photo and like talk to them or something. Like, I feel so bad.
you just like want to go in there and be like, I don't even know where to start. Do I clean? Do I cook? Like, do I like
Give you a
comfort
hug?
these people? Like, what do I do? Like, and that's the thing, is like that's what these nurses must have felt, is just,
You feel
what do we do? Like,
and you've got to figure, like, no one was trained for really what this was, and now we're thankful that people learned and developed skills and schooling and all this just for these people. But
we've come a long way, but like we still got a ways to go, I would say.
Oh yeah, there's still a lot of room for improvement, you know, and I don't know, it's just so sad. But I know it's funny because like when people see me in public, they don't think much of it. They just think like I wouldn't even care. But I'll help people if I see them and they need help. I mean, I've even helped an old lady load stuff into the back of her car because she couldn't lift it out of the cart.
Oh, everybody knows. Don't make fun of any disabled people in front of me, because I can and will say something.
I will beat you up.
Yeah, we will throw hands, my friend. I used to hate that in school. Like, these kids would be so freaking cruel to like disabled people, and I'm glad that attitude's changing over time. Of, hey, maybe don't bully kids who can't defend themselves, you assholes. I can't tell you. I probably, as a kid, I remember throwing a punch into one kid's mouth because he called my brother the R word.
Yeah. You know.
And that was not, that was a trigger. I don't even remember even thinking about it. I turned around and just popped the kid.
I mean, growing up, I have a cousin on my mom's side. We were in the same grade. He was about a year older than me. But this is before they had special classes for kids like him. And, you know, he's mentally disabled, but he was like my best friend. and kids would make fun of him. I got into so many fights because I was trying to defend him, because he, you know, he doesn't know any better. His mentality, I would say now that we're both in our 30s, he's probably like a 13-year-old. Like, he doesn't know. But I will say this, he loved Peter Pan. And he always calls me Princess Lily because of my hair. And his specialty, though, is that he can memorize things in a one run. So you know how the credits can roll really fast?
Yeah.
If you ask him any question, he remembers it in the first roll. So
that's crazy.
You can ask him out of order and he knows it. It like blew my mind. So
it's just, you know, like I said, I'm glad that attitude is changing about this kind of stuff, especially when it comes to mental illness. I have some concerns about mental illness nowadays, particularly how it's portrayed in the media a lot. But also that sometimes it just feels a little like trendy for kids. That scares me. I hope you don't think you're special because you're mentally ill. That's not something you should wrap your identity in. I think the social media makes it acceptable, and they need to take that away because their kids are not understanding, like, that's not how it works. Awareness is one thing, trendiness is another. It's not trendy to be anything that actually somebody actually suffers with. Like,
it's like going on TikTok and I see some of these kids who are like disabled and stuff like that do these TikTok videos. I love watching their videos. I make sure they get likes all the time because I'm just like such a huge fan of these kids.
I follow so many, it's not even funny.
Oh, I know. Like, a lot of them like doing the dances and stuff. And what I love is reading the comments because people are so encouraging. And I was like, I wish more people would do that, you know.
Yeah, these and especially a lot of young people. Like, that always like makes me feel a little hopeful for the future. That, you know, things are going to continue to improve, and maybe we won't have freaking Geraldo 2.0 having to expose another freaking mental asylum going like,
we're doing it next.
Geraldo 2.0.
I say we got to go do the ghost tour of the one in Kentucky, though. What's that one? What is it?
Waverly.
Yes, we got to go do it. But I have to tie a rope around you because I know you're going to leave me. So
I would like toss a red ball into the hallway because of that one legend.
Oh my god.
Like, here you go.
But
like I do have a concern with like mental illness in the media being like kind of cutesified, like, oh, it's adorable that you're crazy.
Yeah,
like, that's not good. Like,
I mean, I hate when people do stuff like that. It's too much. But I just say, you know, people be respectful, and people with disabilities, yeah, maybe some act out, but you know, they don't always know. Some are bad cases, some are not so bad. But you guys be nice.
Yeah, sometimes they don't. And also, don't treat them any differently like that you would treat anybody else. Especially for people who have like cognitive illnesses. Like, we never treated my brother any different than we treated each other. And
and you know what? We dressed him as if he was like us. We took him. Yeah,
he had his own personality. He picked out his own stuff, and you know, he had things he liked. He had thoughts. You know, he couldn't verbalize those thoughts, but he had them. Like,
he said I was slow in the head. He made fun of me.
That's hilarious.
He did.
Well, I remember one time my brother insinuated that one of your sisters was special. And that came from him. And I'm like, the disabled one.
Like, his mentality fully wasn't of his age, but he knew. Like, he understood quite a bit. So I know people like, oh, well, I wouldn't say this or do this. No, we never let him think that he was disabled. He was just like us.
He wasn't any different.
He, you know, we even took him in, you know, he went to amusement parks, he traveled, we took him shopping, we did everything
South
with
Park,
him.
And I thought, me and my youngest brother, we thought we were gonna get the fast end of a belt because he watched. Okay, so we were watching South Park one day, and this little shit, man, One of the characters said shit, like, or some cuss word, or damn, or something, and Michael turns around and goes, shit! And me and Christian look at each other. And we're like, we are in so much fucking trouble.
He was a funny kid, though, and, you know...
He was a terrible kid.
He had one hell of a life, and I just said, don't treat him any different. They're people, too.
They are.
And be kind, rewind.
Be kind, rewind.
Just thinking about Blockbuster days.
And the reason why I say we still have a lot to go, because have you heard of the hashtag Free Britney movement going on?
Okay, I saw it, but I didn't read into it. So
I'm still researching because I'm kind of lost in a lot of the details going on. But essentially, her dad has a conservatorship over her.
Yeah, I saw that her sister's trying to get it now. But Britney Spears can't get all of her. They won't let her have full control over her own stuff.
And the thing is, the thing I can't find any information on is if she's deemed mentally because you have to be rendered like unable to make your own decisions. You have to be rendered mentally incapable to get a conservatorship. So what is it that is going on with her that's been decided?
Well, see, what's weird is that her dad did that a long time ago. Remember when she shaved her head? It's
been over a decade, apparently.
Okay, well, he tried to convince people, so naturally the court granted it to him. Now, over time, she got better, and then she was actually doing shows every day like Celine Dion did in Las Vegas. So she was doing shows nightly, and she was doing really well. She was staying really healthy and everything else, so she was doing great. And then things kind of went batshit again. I don't know. I don't think it was necessarily her. I think it was her dad. But he got sick, so she stopped doing her Vegas shows to kind of help take care of him. How nice. And that's from what I read. And then it's been kind of quiet for a while. I don't know how he's doing. And now her younger sister is trying to take it over. I think her younger sister's actually trying to help her.
I hope so. Like I said, I haven't looked completely into the situation because I've kind of been waiting for all this information to come out in a way that I can look at it. I'm not one of these people who I like getting half-assed information. I just don't like it.
Same.
For as much as I don't research, I do research. I promise you. I don't like getting only fragments of things, because then you draw quick conclusions and then you can be hurting somebody more than you're helping them by not having all the information. But in this case, there's no reason at least to me, there's no reason Britney Spears needs somebody to have a conservatorship over her. She looks like she's perfectly capable.
She really cleaned herself up and performing
but she's
in Vegas
cognizant.
and everything.
Like, why is she asking for help in these videos that she's been putting out? Like, why? What's making her feel that way, I guess, is my question.
They said a lot of issues comes from her dad. I don't know what.
I wouldn't doubt, but she's been in this life since Mickey Mouse Club shit.
Her parents let her go into it, or they put her into it. I don't know what, but that's it. That's show business. But I think her dad wanted control because he wanted the money.
Yeah, because
she's worth a lot.
It's very interesting to me, too, that Britney's the one with these issues, but Jamie Lynn, who has not been in show business even nearly as long, doesn't. So it's like, what is the deal here?
Yeah, because her sister, she was on Nickelodeon for a while until she got pregnant, and then she decided to, just kind of be a mom, But I hope her sister's really just trying to help her. Like, if she figures she can get it from the dad, and maybe just hand it back over to Britney.
A lot of people are saying, too, that they don't really trust the word of her sister right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I don't know, there's some shady shit going on there, too. It's a very strange situation, like I said, and I've been trying to, piece it together. But the thing that worries me is the legal documentation of a conservatorship, because I don't know what that means for her. You know what I mean? Like, if she's not capable of making her own decisions.
She hasn't gone out like been irrational since the whole shaving her head. And I understand maybe the pressures of, you know, the life.
I did read something that maybe she was off her meds and that was what was going on, but I'm like,
I'm sure the pressure of being a celebrity and everything else and what she does, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I can, you know, I'm not necessarily upset at her because I'm sure it's quite a bit on you. You're constantly,
me either.
I'm more just concerned.
I'm more just like concerned for her at this point, because if we've learned anything over the years about mental illness, especially with a lot of these celebrities who end up killing themselves, like, this is scary to like watch. She
has 2 kids, you know.
Yeah,
I think,
who need
honestly,
her.
I hope that she can get her money, or, you know,
yeah,
all of
you
her
know,
shit back.
despite of what the, you know, father has said about that, because apparently he has been accused of abusing either both or one of her sons. I don't know which. I've seen it both ways.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that abuse entails. I couldn't find any solid answer as to what that abuse was. That's concerning. Yeah. Because if he's abusing the boys, I mean, what has he done to her, I guess? And I'm not saying that he's done anything like sexual or anything like that, but even just like verbal and mental abuse can hurt people. Yes. And I hate this like mentality in this culture that we have, that sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. They can, though. That shit will break you over time.
And so will the sticks and stones. Just so you know.
And it's just... It's very strange to watch because, you know, like I said, we've had people like, you know, Mac Miller, you know, recent, Chester Bennington. You have a lot of these guys who end up just being cracked under the pressure of what their lives are. So that's why it's worrisome to me. And like you said, she has kids. Like, they need her.
Yeah, and she kind of stayed out of the spotlight for some time, and I think, you know, she was really working on getting better, and she seemed she was doing really, really good. And I was like, oh, that's cool, you know, maybe she might bounce back, but not like full throttle like she, you know, she was in her early years. And I was like, oh, that's cool, you know. And then all this hit, and I was like, what happened? And I was like, she seemed like she was doing really well, and I was like, that's really cool. You know, I'm not saying I'm a huge Britney Spears fan or anything, because I'm not, but I mean, I would still support in a sense what she was trying to do, you know.
I've always been kind of a fan. I like her music.
I liked some of it, not all of it, but
and she's actually really super funny, like in a lot of her interviews and shit. Like, she's actually really hilarious. And I guess that's where like I'm scared for her, because, you know, I don't know if you've been paying attention to these Instagram posts or whatever, but people are telling her, hey, you know, do this if you're in trouble, and she'll do it. Or, hey, throw a symbol of this in your things if you're in trouble, and she'll do it. So she's reaching out. It's just a matter of like, what do we do? Like, what's going on? Like,
well, here's the thing: is like, okay, so the local radio station was talking about it one morning. Which is kind of odd, but that's what they picked, and they were talking about that in the videos and stuff like that, where she would wear like, wear a pink shirt and like black pants or something, like if you need help.
And it was very specific.
And someone's like, well, maybe she's just messing with people now. I was like, I don't know, but you know, that's really hard to tell. You don't know, but you're hoping it's not a joke, and maybe she really needs help, and I'm sure
she must be a little. I don't think she would do that to fuck with me. I don't know,
because she doesn't seem like that kind of person.
She doesn't have that history either. She doesn't have that history of doing that, like of punking her audience, I guess. Yeah. Like, whenever Britney Spears has had a meltdown, it's been a meltdown.
Yeah, because when I googled Free Britney, like one article says Britney Spears appears to endorse the Free Britney movement. Why do fans want to free Britney Spears? Casey Musgraves addresses the Free Britney movement. Like, there's all sorts of stuff. I don't know, but
I'm scared of her, and that's why I was saying that mentally, you know, for as far as mental illness goes, we do have a long way to go, because the fact that somebody can be granted a conservatorship over you, it is very scary. Yeah, and that's the thing. She's an adult.
Like, she's had no history beforehand, but all of a sudden.
Yeah, you know. She had her one famous meltdown where she shaved her head, and actually, I've heard information later about that whole ordeal, and that's a sad. She's even like, I remember like her Black album, like where she went dark or something, where she had like dark hair. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Everybody calls it her Black album, but I don't know what it was. They said that was her trying to kind of wiggle out of the influence of her studio and everybody she felt was controlling her. So I think this is something she's just been struggling with a long time, and I think we're seeing that, you know,
getting out of contracts, and I don't know. I just hope she can get back her life and everything else, and hope she does better.
But yeah, that's why I thought we could talk about like how, like, particularly how the disabled and mentally ill are treated in the media today, and I thought she was a good example because it's...
Yeah, that is a good one.
And then you have people like... I won't say her name because I won't give her that attention. There's a particular YouTuber, and I'll tell you who she is later, Al, but she likes to speculate on people's mental health.
Do I already know the answer?
Probably not. I don't know how much you would know about this person. But she loves to spread misinformation about people's mental states.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to the point where she's just putting slander out there. That's
like
her name.
Like, yeah. Oh, wait. I'm in the wrong... Oh, okay.
Look in your, yeah.
I see it now. I see it.
And the reason why I can't stand people like this, because even psychiatrists would tell you I can't diagnose somebody that doesn't sit with me in sessions.
She looks psychotic on her own.
Yeah, she's got a lot going on, okay?
She's 39 years old and she's doing this crap?
Yeah, well, the thing is she's lied about her age, so people actually think she might be a little older than that.
That doesn't shock me.
Which I'm like, oh my god. She's got a lot of issues, okay? Like, she talks about, like when Justin Bieber was still, like, an actual teenager, she talked about fantasies of wanting to be with him.
That's creepy.
And she literally outright calls herself a predator. Which I'm like, if this were a dude, we would be all over this, right?
Yeah.
Like, so there's a lot of great videos out there deconstructing her entire life, and I love it. And she gets so butthurt because, like, they're just doing to you what you do to all these celebrities.
Yeah.
Like, she's out here going, like, Selena Gomez is going to die of a drug overdose because she's mentally unwell. And it's like, how would you know, though?
But, like, there's videos of, like, oh, she blocked me, and oh, she did this, oh, she did that. I'm like, there's a lot of shit talking on you.
And she's not a psychiatrist. Like, she has no psychoanalytical training. And this is the other thing that we need to approach in our day-to-day shit, okay? Just because you read one psychology book or you took one psychology class in high school
doesn't make you an expert.
Stop diagnosing people. Stop. Like, it's not good for that person.
Yeah, because you don't know what that person's going through or what they've gone through, and you criticizing them does not help at all. Like,
and most mentally ill people don't know they're mentally ill.
And, you know, and maybe they went through something in their past, you know, PTSD, and they developed that. I kind of consider that in there. You don't just start, you know, telling them how they should think and feel and do. Shut your mouth. You don't know.
Yeah. And it's just, I don't like people like this particular person because they're just out here just spewing just some bullshit, thinking like, I can diagnose a psychopath using this freaking list that I found online.
That some other jackass who thought the same thing created it.
Which, yeah, it's probably based off a real psychological evidence, but like, you cannot diagnose people. You're not a doctor. You don't do this. This isn't your field. Stay out of it.
Yeah, unless you go to school and you graduate with a degree and everything and you've studied, I don't want to hear anything from you You're
and
not a fucking
all
expert.
psychiatrists will tell you we cannot diagnose people we do not talk to. Like, they can't look at somebody's, like, you know, I know the big one out there at the time was Jake Paul, right? Like, is Jake Paul a sociopath? And people were like watching his videos, and literally every actual clinical psychologist, I watched their videos about Jake Paul, where like, we can't diagnose him because we don't sit in sessions with him. We can't diagnose him based off of video evidence. That's not accurate.
That's not how it works.
And especially that he's probably not the way that he is on camera. Like,
yeah, you know, it's like TV personalities and stuff. They're one way when they're on TV, but when you meet them in real life, they're totally different people.
and one guy said, like, straight up, like, he might be a psychopath, he might be a sociopath, but we're not going to know that unless I sit in sessions with him. And he's like, diagnosis takes a long period of time.
It does. And you know, again, people, don't call yourself an expert. Just shut the fuck up.
You're not an
leave
expert.
it to an actual professional.
Can we also talk about how people use disabled people for brownie points, and that needs to stop too?
Oh, yes. If you do that, my message
You're a terrible
to you,
person.
yeah, fuck you. That's all I gotta
If
say.
you're gonna be nice to disabled kids, because, you know, like, at least in my high school, they had like a peer program, so like students would go and sit with like the disabled kids and like the special ed classes, and they would just, like, you know, help out or like do like activities with them or something. But you know how many times that I heard these kids were actually picking on these disabled kids?
Yeah.
And they were just in the peer program to look good on their college shit. You're a terrible fucking person.
Why don't you try doing things out of the kindness of your heart instead of just shitting on these poor kids? You know, it's
Because
terrible.
let me tell you, if I ever find out that any of those fucking kids did anything uncouth to my brother, oh, we're throwing hands. Again, we're throwing hands.
I didn't even go to high school when they were in high school. I will fuck them up.
I will go to my reunion just to slap you. Like, that is literally... I will do it in front of everybody, too, in the dead quiet of, like, some speech. Like, I will make sure it is heard.
I mean, just don't do it because you want to look good on paper. Why don't you do it because it's the kindness of your heart as well? Like,
or now, and that, and like social media shit, right? Like, social media, like, everybody, sometimes I see these videos of these people who are like, oh, we gave this, you know, this kid with cerebral palsy, like, you know, his own prom, and it's like, but are you, like, please tell me you're doing that out of the goodness of your heart.
my thing is, why do you have to put it on the internet? Why does that have to be a showboat for you? If you truly cared, you don't need to take a selfie with them or pictures of them and post it on the internet telling them what you did. You know?
I didn't do that to my brother. I mean, very rarely did I even post pictures with me and Michael, but I was with him all the time. I could have used my brother for fucking internet clout if I wanted to. Did I, though? No, because I'm not a terrible person. And there's a difference. Michael was nonverbal, right? He can't consent to being on the internet with me.
Yeah, and that's the thing, though, is that we never, ever did anything like that with him. But, you know, people who do that, I mean, you're a piece of shit. And people who try to lie to get, like, free money from the government or discounts or anything like that, you're
you're also terrible.
Too. You're a piece of shit. You need to die.
Like, because most of the kids, like the most of the disabled people I see on TikTok, you know, who have TikToks, they have you know, they're able to talk. They're verbal.
Yeah.
So that means that they can consent when they want to be on camera, when they don't want to be on camera. You know, I'm sure they'll make it very clear to you.
Like Michael, he you know, he was shy anyways, but he couldn't even write his own name. So
yeah, my brother was painfully shy.
we practiced on a sheet of paper to just get him to practice to write an X to sign for something he actually had to do himself. And that was a chore on its own, but it was funny. But, you know, just quit using him for your benefit. You know, why don't you try to do something, be nice without having to post it on the internet? Sorry.
Here's a good, but here's like a good example too. Is like, so my brother didn't graduate high school. He actually dropped out. But he was just ready to be done, you know, and his doctor pretty much said like, yeah, he can go to school until he doesn't want to go anymore. And he went all the way up until he was like 18. Yeah, a little after he turned 18, he decided. So, but that they still let him walk the stage for his graduation, you know, because they were like, if he would have been normal, this would have been when he graduated anyway. And do you know that everybody in the auditorium stood up and applauded and like encouraged my poor brother, who was the smuggest he could be, walking on that stage, getting his not diploma. And everybody stood, and it was like one of the greatest moments of my life, because like I remember being so moved and so like emotional that people were so kind.
Yeah, I really wish I could have been there for that, but to some other things I was unable to be there. But when I heard about it, I thought that was like the neatest thing ever.
See, and I could have taken a video of that and posted on the internet.
But you know what? You didn't. Why? Because
it didn't even cross my mind. Like, I was too busy being in the moment of, wow, like, that's amazing.
He accomplished something I didn't. I never walked across stage because I got a GED.
See,
he beat me to something. That little shit.
I just like he's the only dropout to ever walk the stage.
Well, I mean, they had a graduation for like if you scored and everything, because I scored high, and then I got like a letter from like the governor and some other accreditations, but I was like, I don't care.
I'm just laughing because he literally like signed his, you know, quote unquote signed his dropout slip. And like a month later was walking the graduation stage. It's hilarious. I like
that little booger though.
And when we had to like scramble to get him like pictures and everything done, because
his pictures were so cute.
And they were so cute. And he was such a ham.
He was.
And then people sending him graduation gifts. I'm like, guys, he didn't
he didn't really graduate, but
my brother's the only one who's ever been rewarded for dropping out of high school.
Shit, I never got anything.
Yeah, dang. Well, other than Casey Anthony, but you know.
Yeah.
But the other, and the reason why I say we have a lot more room to go, I think a lot of laws and stuff are going to have to be changed and molded for future. Yes. Mentally ill people and disabled people, like, because conservatorships bother me. When we were trying to get one for Michael, because once again he had his own thoughts and, you know, feeling, but he was mentally, like, you know, behind, and he didn't understand, like, when he signed his dropout slip, he didn't understand what he was doing, you know. So we had, you know, talked, you know, after he turned 18, we were gonna have to get some sort of like legal thing done to where we could sign stuff for him, and he, you know, because, you know, he was going to be lifelong disabled. He had been lifelong disabled. You know, he was never going to be a productive member of society.
Yeah, he couldn't do a lot of normal things that you and I do, even simple things. So you got to remember, you think this would be an easy process, but
but the thing with conservatorships is that, like, he's technically at that point, like, you have authority over him, but if somebody doesn't like how you treat him, you know, especially over the age of 18, they can call somebody and they would remove him and he would become a ward of the state. And that was very scary to think about, because it's very hard after somebody's an adult to get them back.
Yeah.
Than it even is with like children, like CPS. It's very difficult to get them back if they're taken. So that's why I say we still have a long way to go. We got a long way to go, as in, like, what do we do for people like my brother who were lifelong disabled? You know, where he was never going to be a productive member of society, quote unquote.
You know, he couldn't drive a car. He couldn't even write his own name. He couldn't really talk a whole lot. You know,
he was never going to get married. You know, he wasn't, a lot of these like little things.
You know, you couldn't even ask him to cook an egg on the stove because he didn't know how. He couldn't function to do that in a sense.
Right.
Like, you know, it was something so simple. You know, he couldn't necessarily operate a microwave even. Like,
and we had taken care of him our whole lives with no issue. But even then, after he turned 18, my mom had to get paperwork to be able to say, I'm his mother. I'm taking care of him. I've always taken care of him. I'm going to continue to take care of him. And that's a very hard process because it becomes so messy. Because you don't want that risk of them becoming a ward of the state, especially depending on where you live.
Yeah. But, you know, a lot of things have to change still, and I hope people work more towards it and making it better.
I'm also very disturbed the Special Olympics was founded because somebody got lobotomized.
Well, we're not going to talk about that.
Damn, Rosemary Kennedy, man.
Poor lady.
Yeah, if you guys don't know, I don't know what part of the Kennedy family, but they basically started the Special Olympics because they felt bad that Rosemary Kennedy got lobotomized.
And if you're not all sure, if you listen to the previous podcast,
you'll learn all about Rosemary.
Or whatever, you're going to hear about Rosemary.
Rosemary and her shit father who had her lobotomized. Again, that's like the Britney Spears thing, like all over again. Why is this man who, like, exercising that much control over a grown-ass woman?
Yeah, there's something
I don't care how mentally unwell she is. Nobody has the right to just be like, so can you just, like, lobotomize it? Like...
I would just tell it to me, can you just give me a lobotomy?
Do you think Britney Spears' father would have her lobotomized?
Yes.
We're gonna start that rumor.
We are.
Save Britney.
Hashtag.
Remember Rosemary Kennedy.
Never forget.
I do. I feel bad for poor Rosemary, man.
Yeah, she had it bad.
She got the rough end of that one.
But you know, all in all, this episode was just kind of more of a difficult one in a sense because it was more sensitive. But, you know...
Sorry if it felt more tangent-y, but, like...
It's just serious.
There's some stuff that we can't even go into because, like I said, these people were left in, like, their own filth, starving sometimes. A lot of them were chained to beds. There were some kids that had been into the asylum that had never left their cribs.
Yeah, and, you know, and they purposely starved and killed these people to kind of reduce their numbers, and nobody cared. So, that's like I said, no pictures. I'm not doing it this time.
And then, like I said, then it got people like freaking Geraldo coming to the rescue.
If you want to look, Google it, you know, disabled people in asylums and stuff. Go to Google Images, you'll see asylums and pictures of people in them, and it is so... depressing.
I believe you can still find like the Geraldo footage too.
Yes, you can find that. I think you can go even find it on YouTube. I'm sure a couple websites have it, but look into it. It's really interesting, and it's so sad, and it is so heartbreaking, and I know it's hard to believe, but we do have a heart, and we do care. So
and definitely start looking into some laws for the disabled and mentally ill. Like, what do we need to do to change this? You know, like, what do we need to do to make sure that these people are actually protected in our society? You know, that's a responsibility we have.
And if you see someone, like a mother in public with their disabled child and they're acting out or something, instead of making fun of them, how about you just don't judge them, because you don't know what they're all going through and you don't know the difficulty of the situation. Just let it slide. Just either ask them if they need help or just mind your business. That's all I ask.
But also, in any case, like, you see something, say something. If they're abusing them, then step in, please. By all means, kick their ass. Yeah, because, you know, it's tough for these parents with disabled kids and even disabled young adults, you know.
Yeah, I have no shame calling people out in public. I will do it.
You know, so. But we all got to protect people in society, you know, we got to protect those who really can't really protect themselves. I know everybody thinks kids when they think that, but, like, even disabled
adults
people.
Adults, too. You know, Just watch out for all of them. I feel like this is TED Talk. But,
Welcome to my TED Talk.
welcome to my TED Talk. Yeah, so you guys, just be nice, help out when you can, and be considerate of others. Don't be an asshole. I don't want to have to beat you up.
I don't know what our next episode is, but...
We're going to leave it as a surprise, because we don't even know yet, so we'll figure that out later.
Ooh.
Dun, dun, dun. I had a couple things in mind, but I want to announce it, because we're just going to let it happen.
Dun.
But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it's a little more of a sadder thing, but we felt like it was something in our hearts to talk about, and I hope you learned something.
Yeah, and I'm glad we got this out early, because this is a sad subject.
Yes, it is. So the next one, I promise it's gonna be fun.
We'll do something fun again, like the clowns.
Oh my god.
That was fun for me, not you, but...
I had nightmares for like 3 days.
It's fine.
So we'll see you guys next time. Thank you again for stopping by, and I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you for joining Fruity Pebbles podcast.
Reese's Pieces.
That's not even a cereal.
It is when you put milk in it.
I don't know. Wet Reese's Pieces sounds awful.
I know.
Oh God! I just imagine them melting. I don't know.
Why would they melt? It's cold milk.
I don't know.
Okay, we're leaving now.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
gotta go. Bye.
Bye.